How's it going, everybody? It's Man Tomorrow here. Let's wait a couple minutes till people get in here. This is this week of politics 101. It's an insurrection slash overthrowing the government and protecting that. We're going to go through a battery of actual things that went on throughout the week. The reason why we are doing this, so that way there's a record of us actually discussing politics rather than amongst ourselves. We can be able to discuss these things so that way when people start showing up, as soon as the actual primary happens, like after Super Tuesday, you can be like, and that's what it is. Because at the end of the day, there's a lot of things that happen this week, and we need to go over those things. Listen, my actual live streams are not about getting you interested in the political process. That is something that is actually covered under home training. And I am not here to actually forcing you to actually be a part of the political system because we have a system that is at will, and it's not our job to get you interested in your local politics so that way you can actually change the things in your local government. At the end of the day, if you want to see change, you're going to have to make it yourself. Otherwise, you're just going to have to be complaining post hoc after these things are over. So what's going on, Mike? What's going on, Nicole?
Hey, what's going on, MOT? Go ahead, continue. I'm just getting set up here.
Right. Hey, what's going on?
All right, what's going on, Mike?
All right, so first item on the docket is the actual case between the election interference in 2020 has been held up in court because the actual Supreme Court needs to rule on the simple fact whether or not the sitting president had the actual right under his official duties to actually do an insurrection or overthrow the government. I thought the 14th Amendment was pretty clear about that, but for some reason, they keep using this actual idea that the executive branch have like this overarching
MOT, your
power.
mic is breaking up a lot.
How about now? We're good? We're good?
Yeah, that's better.
All right,
yeah, you sound pretty good there.
All right, so what we're looking at this point is like the courts have stopped the case between the election interference. But for some reason, the last sitting president of the United States have it under his mind state that he get to obstruct the actual proceedings as part of his official duties as president. It is the actual flagship story of our actual live stream. So what do you think about that, Mike?
I missed the last portion of your mic is breaking up quite a bit.
Still breaking up?
Yeah.
All right, hold on a second. I think I can fix it. Hold on a second. All right, we should be able to go now. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, we
All
can hear
right.
you.
All right. So the first story is the actual Donald Trump making the actual legal argument that he has the actual protection that he could be able to not be held responsible for the crimes he committed while he's in office. So what do you think about that?
I'm not sure that would hold up in court. Protection under the law means that there's some form of systemic aggression against a person or a citizen that is unjust based on several of the areas of protection. And in this case, I'm not sure if that holds up.
Yeah, in fact, Trump's attorney during the insurrection, they had called him, and his daughter Ivanka had come in and said, "Listen, you better listen to your attorney because you're getting very close to a point where you're inciting riot or inciting an insurrection. You can be held legally for that." So he understood that he could be held legally responsible for that. That's why he didn't come down to the Capitol, and that's why he kind of stopped just short of or what he considered stopping just short of inciting the riot, of which he did all the way through. But he did incite that riot, and he was warned if he kept pushing that by his own internal team that was there, including his daughter. If he continued to push this, he was going to be liable. He was certainly going to be legally liable for that, and that would have finished him utterly. Of which he is responsible because he did incite that. He did incite that riot. He did incite it. So yeah. So and can he stand above the law with respect to this? No, we cannot. And that was also shown out certainly with President Nixon during the Watergate and all that was going on, and where Nixon tried to say, well, if the president says that you can do something, it makes it legal, and that was untrue as well. So he was held liable for that, had to be pardoned for his crimes by President Ford when he came in. But that's no, the president is not above the law. What you say cannot immediately make something legal. The president is held to the laws of the land. He is not above the law.
But the Secret Service is pretty on record of saying that he wanted to be driven to the actual event and they refused to drive him there. So I don't understand how could it be possible that he can even make this claim? Because they're just going to bring the Secret Service in and be like, look, you were intending on being there with these people who was attempting to disturb an actual proceeding.
Well, the Secret Service, is supposed to, work, and protect the president. That's what they're supposed to do. But the president, was calling his own shots. So the Secret Service, it's a difficult call at that moment. It's a difficult call, and it also depends on the Secret Service people that were there. Kind of what were their feelings? So difficult. But we're looking at this right now, and it looks pretty obvious that there was, even though we haven't charged anyone yet with insurrection, we've charged them with certain types of laws that they broke, as far as you know, as far as what they did in the Capitol and so forth. But proving the intent that they had the intent to overthrow the government, if you will, or cite an insurrection. They're saying that they didn't have full proof or intention of that, of which I think is a total crock of bull, because I believe that intention was there. The fact that they ran up on the Capitol and attacked people and police officers, and actually police officers were injured and one was killed. I think it's a ridiculous notion. That this was the case. So there's still a big cover-up still going on right now that still hasn't been fully flushed out. MOT, this hasn't fully been flushed out to the level that it really needs to be, and that I also find is disturbing. that has not been fully done yet.
I mean, they're still finding people who were actually at the Capitol still. Police officers and whatnot. They're still finding people who was actually there at the actual Capitol building. Still finding people who was there. Mike?
But they haven't charged one person with insurrection yet. Not one. All right, go ahead, Mike.
Yeah.
All right. So, do you think that if like 10,000, black men from like I don't know Detroit had went to the actual Capitol building talking about what they were going to overturn, do you think that these people would actually be allowed to be walking around with these type of arguments?
No. And we can also look at the evidence from the night before where Black Lives Matter protesters were outside of the White House and passing down that same street. They were actually being harassed and harangued by the same law enforcement that was used to protect the insurrectionists. And so I don't think that that's true. I think history has a pretty good pretty good reference point for how this would turn out if they were black. We have black people that voted in that same election and were actually arrested for voting, even in the midterms. And so what we're seeing here is not necessarily an American thing, but more specific to one demographic of people.
Hey, Renaissance man, so thank you for and welcome to the live stream, sir.
Hey, what's up, guys?
Hey, what's going on? All right, so for our next question, here is that I think Jack Smith has put the Supreme Court in a pretty good position to rule whether or not the rule of law in the United States even applies this early. I think he should have did it at the first beginning, like last summer when he brought the indictments. I think he should have posed the question then. I think posing it now, it could delay the actual trial or whatever. So what do you think the actual outcome of him actually posing the question to the Supreme Court? Like, what do you actually think the actual outcome of that is going to be? Mike, what do you think the outcome is going to be when it comes to the actual Supreme Court getting involved in this actual particular case of executive immunity while you're in office?
That's pretty tricky, considering that you have a Supreme Court that is, at least one justice whose wife was involved in it. They may go the way of interference, running interference on this, and so I'd be interested in seeing how this turns out. But I'm also interested in seeing how the wife of a justice, a sitting justice, figures their way out of this, because they're also involved in this.
To go.
I think I think the justice, they're going to have to uphold the Constitution on this. I do believe. I'm not a constitutional lawyer, but certainly I'm not. But I believe they're going to have to uphold it, and they're going to have to, go against the president and say that you can't, you're not going to be able to do this. No, I don't believe that they're going to be able to uphold that. I just don't think so. Like they had to uphold the election, I think you also have to uphold that the president just can't set his own precedent and say what he wants. He's not a dictator. He is an elected official by the people. He just can't arbitrarily make up rules as he goes along in office. He has to follow the laws of this land, the laws of this country, the laws of this land. It is illegal to incite insurrection. It is illegal to incite a revolt. It's illegal to do such.
I mean, especially when you make the speech, and because the revolt is about the actions that are afterwards that happen. It's not about the actual words. It's the actual words. It's the intent to go there with the Secret Service, and they said no. Like all that stuff is pretty much on the record. So go ahead, Renaissance man.
Yeah, no, I it'll be interesting. Because couldn't they technically decide not to accept the case, not rule on it?
I think that they decided to rule on the case. If they were not going to rule on
Okay.
the case, you would know right away.
Okay. No, so that may be off the table. No, I think no, I definitely think that they will rule that, there are limits to presidential power, because if they didn't, it would look very partisan, because you have to think you have a conservative Supreme Court. Both parties always kind of try to push the envelope about presidential power and executive power without checks on Congress. But it's the conservatives, if you look at actual ideology, who are supposed to have a lot more problems with, upholding and maintaining, executives, judicial and legislative branch, and maintaining the separation of those three, all of those things. So I think if they take it, they'll just have to. If they do anything but that, it will look entirely partisan, and it will actually, I think, discredit the Supreme Court and its credibility, which, believe it or not, they're actually concerned about. I was actually listening to an article the other day. They were saying, like, when the Dobbs case first got on the docket, Coney Barrett actually wanted to not take it that term, and she actually voted against it, but they had enough votes to take it because they didn't want it to look just blatantly partisan. That pretty much after Ruth Bader Ginsburg dies and this woman gets on the court, you immediately, turn around and overturn Dobbs. So there is some people who are concerned about, even amongst the conservative leaning members, who are concerned about the Supreme Court not looking completely partisan.
Yeah, I agree. Along with that, we have this week where Rudy Giuliani lost his defamation case against 2 election workers in Georgia. That is also something that just happened within the last couple of days. Any thoughts on that, Mike? 150 million or 148 million that's going to be awarded, even though it won't be paid out to the actual election workers that he actually defamed and lied about and all this time. And this is why I say, once you bring things to court, you can lie about things for a certain amount of time, but the moment that you have to actually put up or shut up, or actually show up and not, or actually not actually testify, that's where the things actually go at. I think it's a good thing that it did happen. It happened this quick, and he didn't actually testify for the actual hearing and trial.
Yeah, I think this is very interesting conclusion that they were able to come to. Primarily because he's still, even after the ruling, he's still doubling down on the accusations of the 2 individuals, and so I think he just wants to go down in flames to make it look like he's still fighting. But at the end of the day, he doesn't have the money. He's just not going to pay it at the end of the day. So what I think is that his time is limited, in politics. I think that, he's not going to be good. He's not going to be involved in anything going forward. And also he's not going to be a lawyer. He's not going to be able to legally represent anybody. He might be a consultant or a contributor on one of the conservative networks. But in regards to political affiliation and engaging in politics, I think those days are over and done with. And unfortunately, he went from being quote unquote America's mayor to being, America's failure. New Yorkers at one point, backed him pretty strongly, 20 plus years ago. Now he's just a washed up bum, for the lack of a better description.
Yeah, to go.
Yeah, I think his political career has been over for a minute. He's definitely totally finished at this stage. The 148 million that he has to pay to those 2 election workers, more specifically, in Georgia, he's guilty on that. He's going to double down. He definitely doesn't have the money to pay, but he's going to sit around and keep running his mouth and try to play, the whole "hey, oh, what was me" type of deal. But yet, this guy is absolutely culpable for his role in this. He is done. He's out there, but it's just showing you how out of order these guys were in that last election, and where Rudy is right now. Now, if they're going to be able to put him in jail or anything else like that, it's not, doesn't seem too too likely as of yet. But he definitely does have a giant judgment against him, as we all know. I'd love to see him, have to be made to pay it out, or somehow be put in jail for a little bit. But his political career and all that is finished. He's done. I don't even know if he's been. I don't know if he's got. Is he back in the bar again? I know he was disbarred for a while.
No, of course not.
Okay, so he. I know he was disbarred, so I don't believe he's part of the bar anymore. So just exuberant stage left this guy, and let's keep it moving on him. But he's done. He's finished.
All right, Renaissance man.
Yeah. To your point, Mike, I don't even know if this guy will even try to get on the networks, because at this point, any money he makes is going to go towards that $150 million. So the guy's essentially judgment proof at this point, which I find ironically and kind of poetic justice, because if there's anyone who kind of rode the wave of the post 9/11 sort of surge that people like Bush and other people got, it was definitely Giuliani. I'd argue he's the biggest winner. At one point people were talking about him running for president.
Yeah.
But when you look at where his approval ratings were before 9/11, people were really starting to have a lot of critiques, a lot of things to say about the way he was operating, the city, his police department, all of those things. So 9/11 gave him a big boost and kind of really boosted his image, and kind of covered up for a lot of the messed up history that he's had. So I think it's quite ironic and quite funny, to be real with you. At best, I think you may see this guy, firing up a YouTube channel, and trying to have some influence that way, but and basically trying to stay away from any sort of legitimized, in the sense of like working for someone else, because that any sort of funds that he makes is going to be trackable to the IRS, and at that point, like I said, is going to go towards this judgment, because he's definitely not going to be able to pay that.
No, he's not. What I find funny, what you said was funny, was there's no doubt 9/11 resurrected him, because before he was leaving as mayor here, he was leaving with low approval ratings. City was, without a doubt, highly separated on some key issues. He was rather racist, and he was just a problem. So his reputation was terrible. But 9/11 actually resurrected him. So that did bring him back into some level of favor, where people thought positively about him again. And here, water seeks its own level. So here this guy is, back at the level that he should have been at all along. And he's done. Yeah, he's not. But you're totally right. 9/11 resurrected him for sure.
All right. Since we're done with that issue, it looks like Alex Jones is just trying to say that rather than $1 billion he's owed, that he's just gonna pay $55 million over 10 years. Like, forget what was ruled on, that he only has $55 million to pay, $5.5 million a year, and that's what he's going to pay out to these Sandy Hook victims. Any thoughts on that?
He should be made to pay what the judgment is on his ass. He should be made to pay. These guys will walk around here feeling like they don't have to. And, I feel damn near, this guy should be locked up for it. But, he's talking that. He's been on the news running that down, and it's unbelievable. I'm like, oh, really? I mean, I know the man is crazy. He's definitely a few fries short of a Happy Meal, but this guy definitely says he's not going to pay out. He said it. So that's pretty bold. That's pretty bold. I don't know what else I have to say, but that's pretty bold. I'm not paying. That's pretty bold. I'm paying what I want. Okay. All right.
All right, Mike.
Yeah, I think that this is the easy way out for him. If you think about what his revenue is on his platform, he could easily pay this out and satisfy the settlement itself. He doesn't necessarily have that kind of money to begin with. His platform was not worth $1 billion. And so this makes a lot of sense that he would actually do he actually pull a tactic like this. It satisfies both parties. Even the court, I don't think would even argue that.
Yeah, I mean, he owes 1.5 billion for the actual thing. So it does make a lot of sense for him to have a counter offer that is within what he was doing. But he was on some Donald Trump stuff, like switching over assets that didn't need to be actually switched over and all this type of other stuff. Like, I don't know how people get away with that. Like,
But
if
no
you're
one's
going through
agreed to his
bankruptcy,
counteroffer. But no one's agreed to his counteroffer.
no, he's just proposing a counter
He just
offer,
he,
and
he, he
it's
just threw
like,
it down there.
yeah, it's kind of crazy that a person who owes that type of money is just like, you know what, I'm just gonna give a counter offer of my own. Like, I don't understand how that works. Like, if the court says that you owe XYZ judgment, that's what you owe. You just don't come out and say, well, you know what, this is how much money I'm willing to give. That's like, well, why would you stop at just $5.5 million a year for the next 10 years? Why'd you just stop there? Like, I don't understand how that works. Renaissance?
Yeah, I think didn't he get back on what was it, like either Facebook or Twitter, one of the two, maybe both?
Twitter.
Yeah. So he's definitely trying to, use that, I think, to try to, get back in the limelight. As crazy as it sounds, I think that $5 million, if his following is still there, he'll probably be able to raise that pretty quickly. Just because, there's so many wackos that follow this person, or, he can play it to the Trump base, that he might be able to get a good bit of that pretty quickly. Coupled with trying to, get back on. I'm sure you'll see him on Twitter Spaces. That'll be the big thing is Twitter Spaces, as well as I think he's probably still off of YouTube, so he might try to use that to try to drive more revenue and more eyeballs to his platform as well too. But in general, he's kind of following the general trend of most people on the right of, oh well, I've got this judgment against me, it kind of doesn't mean anything. Same thing with Giuliani and his thing, like, trying to downplay it, like they don't have to deal with it, or, hey, I don't have to respond to these subpoenas from Congress. And I think he's probably banking on too Trump getting reelected and probably looking for some sort of pardon in that instance as well too, or some sort of whether it be legal or just a straight up political move to try to basically get that judgment against him nullified.
Yeah. I mean, 'cause that's a lot of money to be owing anybody. And when everybody is on your tail about where your actual political assets are going and all this type of other stuff, you really got a lot to worry about. I'm just not. All right, all right. So our next story is all right, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, or depending on like a Trump presidency as well too. I'm sure this dude would politicize the IRS and basically, hey, don't audit these people, or go audit these people. IRS is already a little bit politicized, but I'm sure he'd take it a whole nother level. So I'm sure some of these people with these judgments are really going to start, pushing for Trump to get back in office.
Yeah, I agree with that too. All right, this week we have Sidney Powell and Kenneth Cheesebro gave their actual quote unquote apologies as part of their actual plea deals. What do you think about that in Georgia? Mike.
It's the least that they can do. It doesn't actually resolve the issue. I think that everybody knew that they were guilty. I mean, everything's on record and has been made publicly available now. So an apology is the least that they can do. I think some jail time and a no-fly list would be greatly satisfying to everyone else.
Yeah, I think that their actual quote unquote apology violates the terms of their actual their plea agreement. I think they came up to like the minimum level of apology that they could potentially make in these letters. I think that they could come back and just hit them with everything once the other cases come forward. Because I don't think these things are no apologies at all. I mean, it kind of reads like the letters of secession when people talk about, slavery wasn't the reason why they seceded from the Union until you read the letters of secession and be like, oh, okay, it makes total sense why they seceded from the actual Union. I mean, that's what I think about this particular sort of situation to where they have to do all these things, but they don't hold them to any type of real accountability other than them just saying, we sorry for trying to overthrow the government and the will of the people within your state. It just doesn't make any sense to me. They would even let them get off with even admitting that they were wrong without any type of real consequences with it. Renaissance?
Yeah, yeah. Now with the no fly list, that probably is probably worse than anything, like any sort of fine. Because I mean, dude, when you go on a no fly list, I mean, you pretty much can't leave the country, and then any sort of cross country travel is going to be basically, hey, I got to rent a car, I got to drive or do whatever, So that alone just makes it more of a something that is just a hassle in general. As far as the apology goes, I mean, take that with a grain of salt. These are people who pretty much got read the riot act and was probably shown like, hey, this is the evidence we have against you. Like, you could plead guilty and try to make our case stronger, or we can basically like try to go after you as well. So, and for all the craziness, like Sidney Powell is defending, like, this woman is still an attorney. She knows full well, like, hey, these people have a case, like, I better just cooperate. So, it's only something that's being done with regards to just, what do you want to call it? Just minimal compliance. So it should be taken with a grain of salt.
Yeah, they go.
Minimal compliance, certainly take it with a grain of salt, but let's see what kind of information she'll come up with when they decide to, or if they decide to move against Trump on this and further what she's going to have to say there. I think that's the key. But the fact is, I would, no fly list, like to see her do some time as well. That's what I really feel is really in order for these people, but I know that's not going to happen. But yeah, that's so.
Yeah,
that's
my
view. Go ahead.
I'm assuming she's probably banking on Trump losing as well, or a lot of these people are, because I think some of them would, if they thought Trump was going to win, they would probably try to delay this thing out and once again hope for a pardon as well too. So I think it kind of shows like where their confidence is as far as Trump actually getting back in office. Because at this point, if you're pleading guilty at this point, like you're basically on Trump's in his crosshairs at this point.
And she said straight out, hey, if you any information you need from me to testify, I will. She said it. So that's part of her concession as well. I will testify against them. That's a silent part of her. Well, not even so much a silent part of it. That's what she actually said. But I think people will try to hold her up on that as things go further down the line. Let's see. But I'm her apology, that doesn't mean much in my view. But anyway.
Yeah. Sorry about that. Catch up with this. Ike Ogermean was like, Renaissance man, sorry I missed your email. So hopefully with these political discussions that are going on Ike's actual channel, you can be sent the email about joining those actual discussions in the future, because so that way you can be included on the actual email list whenever these conversations go out within the actual space to where they have that conversation.
Yeah, no problem, Mike. I appreciate it. Mike. I was trying to give Mike a little backup up there because seems like there's a lot of ignorance on that panel, but don't want to go into that.
Yeah. I mean, it's just that the only thing you have to do is just have a baseline understanding of what's going on. And once you have like a weighted conversation between personnel who keep up with this stuff and personnel who's not interested in this stuff, it could be a way better balanced conversation. I'm not for that because I think that you should already be up to speed on that. Politics and government was a seventh grade subject. And if I was taught this in the Mississippi Delta, there's no reason for grown ass human beings to not understand the actual issues of like affirmative action or anything else. Because people who have all this actual conversation about affirmative action, they don't live in the South. They don't live in the South at all. You would never be able to get away with saying these things in the South. You just wouldn't be able to get away with that. So all right. So this Biden impeachment inquiry is our last thing. Oh my God, this Biden impeachment, this just because impeachment inquiry that's supposed to be going on or voted on, or this show trial that they're trying to have over something that's made up, doesn't look like they've settled on a reason as of yet. So, what are your predictions, Mike?
Say the last part again.
Your predictions about this this Biden impeachment inquiry by the House, Republican House.
It's a nothing burger, and no one's really hungry for that. And so, I think that it's going to hurt them more than anything else, because you're using up what little ammunition that you have. You're going to lose seats next year, anyways, in 2024. And so, an impeachment on Biden, that's not going to actually help you. It's no different than Tree trying to go at Thanos when he came through the portal. He just ripped all the roots and branches off. It doesn't really help you.
Yeah, Nagel.
Total waste of time. A total waste of time. It's political theater. That's about it. Nothing to it. Then they're going to try to bring in a Hunter Biden or something else like that involved with this as well. I was kind of goofing when I say that. He doesn't even hold any office. This is the kind of stuff they're just trying to pull. Waste of time, trying to hurt the president a little bit more, try to sully the image. But that's really about it. A nothing burger. Absolutely.
Rest house, man.
Yeah, I agree with Mike too. The main thing is it may actually hurt them in the sense of when you look at this Republican-controlled House, when you start talking about running, at least in 2024, outside of Trump, you start talking about some of these House races, some of these districts that the Democrats should have won, that Republicans actually won, some of these moderate districts. When you start asking these people, what have you done in the past, 2 years you've been in Congress? It's like, okay, we've investigated Hunter Biden. We've tried to impeach the president with no real evidence. It's going to be really shown here. We had a speaker, his speakership didn't even last through the fourth quarter of the year. It took 17 votes to get him there. People are already unhappy with the current speaker. Like, it's just going to reflect a lot of dysfunction of, hey, like, these people are not serious about actually, passing anything of substance or meaning. And, want to go and, open inquiries into the president, want to go investigate Hunter Biden, it's just more troll and culture war politics to try to pander to the extreme base. So,
yeah, that's what I think is well. And where do you see the people who are in the middle of the road, or the people who are actually on the right, and their lack of interest in even discussing any of these issues that we brought up today? Mike. I mean, do you see anybody who's in the quote unquote middle, or in the middle of the road, third way politics type people, these so-called independents here, who can actually even go over these issues and actually have a competent point of view about any of these things that are actually going on in the country that we brought up on the show today?
I mean, when it comes to RFK Jr., I know a lot of people seem to be getting behind him and saying that, well, he has last name, his last name has credibility, his last name has value or something like that, right? John Kennedy in Louisiana had the same last name, but it doesn't seem to have the same credibility as JFK himself, or even Robert F. K. Sr., or even Ted Kennedy for that matter. So when people say that, you know, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is going to be this sort of lightning bolt, you know, of non-party engagement in terms of the political process, I don't think that's true. There's no, I mean, nail him down on one policy that that would be beneficial if it's about Black men voting their interest. What interest does RFK Jr. have that Black men can align themselves to if we're being specific about identity politics here? It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me as to why this candidate seems to be the, you know, the quote unquote cat's meow for Black people, especially Black men, but they seem to be really getting behind him. That being said, I don't see him going anywhere past you know, a few percentage points, and in fact, he may not get on all 50 states ballot. So,
Yeah, I mean, if you look at it, it looks like Joe Biden won't even be on one ballot. And like, what is it, New Hampshire? Like a write-in campaign to get him on the ballot. But that's just where we at. So, Renaissance man, same question to you. The people who apparently are in the middle or undecided or even on the right, do you see them covering any of these issues that we've covered today and or even this week?
Nah. It's not, like I said, it's not something that they're too interested in. It's just, like I said, this is, you can tell where people's minds are. Like I said, that's why I think you see the Hunter Biden, like I said, the Joe Biden inquiry, is because people are not interested in any of these real topics or any real substance. And to Mike's point, you know, people, I think we had this argument on another panel on code breakers, but you know, people who are on this mindset of, you know, a Kennedy name, you know, carries all this weight. I'm like, dude, you know, this is not the 1960s with RFK, you know, and JFK. Like, if anything, the message has been from both the Republicans and the Democrats is people are tired of establishment names. You know, people did not want Clinton in 2016, even though she had the name, and people on the other side didn't want Bush in 2016, even though he had the political dynasty on the other side. So this idea that political, you know, these names from, you know, 50, 60 years ago, like they would have the gravitas that they once did. I think it's just a complete misreading of where things are right now. I got a couple of stories too, MOT, to add.
All right. I'm gonna get into Gones of actual opinion, then we're gonna go through the other stories after in the Gones opinion. Fair?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah. Just like Kennedy and all that. No, I don't see that happening. He doesn't have a lot of his own family's really not even supporting him. So where do I really see this guy going? Not too far. You see some people trying to say, hey, they like him. Some of the people on the far right, you know, who are trying to say they're not going to go with Trump, or maybe if Trump doesn't get in, they'll go with this guy. But I don't see it. I definitely don't see him coming through and getting anywhere in a primary if there is. So I think once again he's another far outsider trying to climb his way in that will not be successful. And that's it. That's all I got to say about that.
Oh, actually, I have another something I want to kick around the actual panel. How Nikki Haley wanted to actually have an actual debate with Donald Trump, with just her, Ron DeSantis, and Donald Trump. She was calling for that this week. What are your thoughts about that, Mike?
I think it's a no-go. You know, I don't see. I mean, okay, Koch brothers backed her, but I don't see it going beyond that. Trying to debate your former boss doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Yeah. I mean, but it would be good to see Donald Trump up there with Ron DeSantis. I'm not gonna lie, that would be great. But
you know, it's interesting that DeSantis is actually polling lower in Florida than Trump is.
Yes, he is. Man, that dude should just get out of the race and just go for 2028, man. I'm not sure what he's actually holding on for. I know he got a gang of money up front. I don't see him coming back. And I don't, even if it's Nikki Haley, it ain't going to be Nikki Haley either. She's probably going to be chosen as the second to Trump, and that's going to damage her credibility altogether with just being on the ticket with somebody that she can't criticize. I just think it's a bad deal even asking for something like this because she just isn't. I mean, she's the governor of South Carolina, but you're talking about running an entire country, and nobody's going to pick anybody from South Carolina to run the entire country. It has never happened, and it's not going to happen. So, Renaissance, what you guys say about that?
Yeah, I think that's a move actually by the establishment because you all said Koch brothers backed it.
Yeah,
I think that's them basically the establishment having some concern of Trump's electability and winning. So I think they probably saw how the whole Gavin Newsom, what was it, DeSantis and Newsom had a debate.
oh yeah,
Uh,
disaster.
yeah, yeah. I think they sort of saw it like sort of a smaller, like more controlled type of event versus your standard ones right now. You're talking about what basically I know the guy from North Dakota suspended his campaign. Pence
Yes.
has suspended his, but previous debates have kind of been essentially a pretty crowded stage. You still got Christie up there, you still got Ramaswamy. Tim Scott has suspended his campaign now as well. But I think it's more to try to get a more intimate type of debate going with the hope of basically they want to see if Nikki Haley can catch Trump. That's their hope is that hey, Trump is going into New Hampshire. That's what they're really banking on because Trump, for all intents and purposes, looks like he's running away in Iowa, where and then ironically they thought DeSantis was going to get a big boost in New Hampshire, and ironically Haley has gotten the boost and Trump has still stayed relatively far ahead. So they're hoping. I think this is a play to try to insert Nikki Haley as in. They think she'd be a lot more electable, which I definitely think she should. I think I think she would. I think honestly, if she ran, she'd probably beat Biden. To be frank with you, just because she doesn't have the record, she'd be a return to a more moderate candidate. You'd have a woman vote as well because you actually have a woman running as a Republican nominee. So I think they're on to something in as far as electability, but the base is not buying it, and that's the real problem.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Haley is going to have the same problem that Hillary had. They all on board with this woman shit until they get in the actual polling booth, and you'll be like, "Yeah, I like my position just the way it is, and we just gonna vote for somebody else." I mean, because I just don't see it happening. I just don't.
I mean,
No.
if they didn't
Mike.
treat if they didn't treat Liz Cheney with the sort of grace that she she would deserve from being a part of the GOP, I don't see why they would do that for Nikki Haley. I just don't see them going all the way to the big dance with her.
I mean, it sounds good as of right now, but I just don't see that it's going to be able to land the plane with Nikki Haley. Like, I just don't see that is going to be even a thing. But that's just me. I mean, because you haven't been tried on anything. I mean, you're from South Carolina. I mean, and being from South Carolina, you're not a Midwestern state, you're not a big state, lots of poverty, things are not going right in that state. I mean, things are not way better off with her even being in charge of the state. So I don't get how a person goes from that to just being president of the United States because you're not Trump. I don't understand it. I get her being the vice president, but I don't get her being the top of the ticket. Now, 2028, that's different. But as of right now, I just don't see it. Nigo?
I totally agree. I would definitely like to see them. I would like to see them debate. I would like to see a fight go on. I would love to see that. That would be fun. But as far as her really being a viable candidate right now, no. The numbers are not there for her. I definitely don't see it. I don't see it at this stage. That's my view. Is my view limited? Maybe, but that's my view on how I see Nikki Haley currently. And is she going to be able to make up that big difference between her and Trump right now, some 40-point difference and so forth? I don't see it.
Yeah. Ransom, man, you got some other stories you want to bring up?
Yeah, I don't know, I joined a little late. Did we talk about the Kate Cox story, the abortion story out of Texas?
No, we do need to talk about that.
Yeah, so just some background here for people who, so Texas basically has trigger laws in place even before abortion was made illegal by or Dobbs' decision was handed down by the Supreme Court and handed back to the states. They basically had a trigger ban, so if something like that happened, they'd immediately go into effect after, I believe, 6 weeks. On top of that, they even had a bounty. They call it the bounty ban, where basically they essentially tried to make abortion illegal before the Dobbs case. And if you remember, this is where the criminal liability, the civil liability can come into play. Where, hey, if someone like an Uber driver or a doctor is, basically seen or is suspected of helping a woman get an abortion, they could be basically held civilly liable by a complete stranger. So all of that came into play. So this woman, Kate Cox, she basically had a condition that pretty much said, hey, the vast majority of the time, the child that's born is either going to live for a few hours at best, or the child may not even be alive when she gives birth. So the doctor said for her future viability, for having other additional children, because she stated she wants a large family, it would be best to get an abortion. Even though this is outside of the 6-week ban, she went to the Texas courts, to try to get basically legal protection, which they granted her. The AD, Ken Paxton, the one who was on trial trying to be impeached earlier this year, basically stepped in and wanted the state and got the state to overturn this Texas Supreme Court, to overturn the lower court's ruling, basically saying, hey, all the abortion bans apply in this case, and she is not eligible to receive an abortion in Texas. I believe they have gone to another state, but there are a lot of people who are legal advisors who are telling them not to go back to Texas because of those bans that could basically where they could open themselves up to civil lawsuits. So that's how some of these laws that people have not thought about at all has really started to play out in these cases. And you have people literally who are trying to make medical decisions are now having to go to the courts. I'm sure spends tons of money, anytime you get lawyers and the courts involved. And I've even read that you have some of these red states, a lot of them are actually experiencing even a shortage in doctors and OBGYNs, because they do not want to live in these states and practice out of fear of, they can get sued for whatever reason as well too. So this is starting to have medical fallout in multiple ways.
Correct. Like I keep telling people, these people are about forced birth advocacy. They don't care about the life or the health of the actual mother. They just want them to go through the process. You get pregnant, go through process. Doesn't matter if it's going to kill you. Go through process. And I kept telling people that this is a privacy-based issue. Do you really want to go? And she went through the process, did she not? Went through the process. This actual pregnancy is going to do harm to her life. And then they went to the court and actually overturned the doctor's decision. So it was never up to the doctor in the first place. So I listen. What if you went to get a vasectomy and you had to go appeal this to multiple parts of court? This stuff isn't cheap and it's not free. It's like, man, just keep the government out of people's medical decisions. It doesn't make any sense. Mike.
No, you're right, and that's what HIPAA. HIPAA provides those protections for patient health records. They should be able to. This should be a open and shut case. I'm not sure how they're able to intervene at the state level and into citizens' federal protections. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me as to how they're able to do this. But I would just put the the medical procedures on federal land and see how the states want to react to that.
Look, man, just put it on military bases. Problem solved. I mean, because military have like a whole bunch of land that they're not using that is connected to the actual quote unquote base itself. Yeah, just put it on there. No problem. Problem solved. They're gone.
I think that's a pretty good idea. In actuality, when you say that makes a lot of sense. That actually makes a lot of sense. The military, how much land does the military actually have here in this country? You think about
Too much. Let's just go into too much.
Well,
But they have miles of land around each installation that could be
that's what I'm.
used for
That's,
any number of things. Every installation. It's just not one. Every installation have
look,
miles of land. It's not big.
most of your military installations are in those conservative states, anyways.
that's right.
Yes, they are.
That's right. That's right. That's right. No, that's absolutely right. And a lot of wide open land is in places like wide open in Utah and these other places, Midwest, going out to the west. Yeah. So Arizona in these areas. Well, Arizona's not so much conservative. Well, maybe it could be considered, but yeah, I actually MOT. That's actually a pretty good idea. I actually that makes sense. That makes sense to me. I got to be frank with you. It does.
Policy-based solutions, man.
No, that actually makes that act. I hadn't really thought about that. That's why I'm sitting there saying, hold on a second. That makes sense. That actually makes sense.
Yeah, Black Avenger is actually pretty correct. For live fire exercises, you do need miles of surrounding land, especially with M16s and M60s and 203s and M4. Yeah, you need miles of land in all directions, or at least a lot of hills that are not like neighborhood facing to do that. Like the nearest base that I live near is Buckley Air Force Base, and yeah, you're out in the middle of nowhere. You have to drive a couple miles out. You're still on the base, but you're in
Right.
another county when you're actually doing live fire exercises that are nowhere near anything.
That's right. Because anything could anything could fly a couple of miles. I mean, even a 22 shell can fly. What a 22 shell can fly 2 miles if it So yeah, anything. And anything like that would need a lot of space. But what you brought up, I hadn't really thought about. I'm thinking about that right now. That is an answer. It's a legitimate one as well.
All right,
Yep.
Renaissance, you got no story?
Well, what you just mentioned that I got 2 more now because you just jogged my memory on this one. Unless we talked about it last week. Tuberville, when you're talking about putting abortion on military bases, that is basically what Tuberville was protesting and basically holding up military promotions for. And he's been doing that for several months now. I believe 4 or 5 months. To the point that some people think that Space Command, that basically was supposed to move to Alabama to Huntsville, that's staying in Denver. That's part of the reason why is because
as it should.
I mean, it was a very political move by Trump, after he left office. So it wasn't completely political, saying it should stay there because that's where it's currently operational. And you would talk about like moving people to another state, which would jeopardize mission readiness. But with that was Tuberville's whole rationale was, hey, that basically abortion would be able to, it could, if someone who was a service member was getting it, that the military would be paying for it in these states like Alabama where it's illegal. He has since, I'm sure he still holds that view, but he has since stopped holding up military promotions this week. Notoriously throughout this process, at one point he compared basically the load that generals and other high-ranking military officials were on from basically having to pull double duty because they cannot promote people to the equivalent of him basically working 18-hour days as a football coach, which is which is laughable at best. So that is ended, and they've actually introduced a bill to actually give officers back pay to try to make them whole, because this whole situation has been going on for almost half a year, where promotions have been being held up. People have had to be put in active positions. People who want to retire have been forced to stay on, longer than necessary. So this charade has finally come to an end. A lot of At one point, they were talking about some Republicans were getting ready to try to, do some sort of action to either overrule him or, strip him of some authority, just because, this a lot of Republican veterans were getting pissed, and a lot of people in the party were getting pissed about it as well, because there was real concern about national security. So I just wanted to bring that up as well.
Yeah, but you have to understand that no one knew who this dude was or cared about it until he started holding up promotions. Like the last person who did anything like this was John McCain, to be quite honest with you. But people don't even remember that about John McCain. Voted against every military pay raise, holding up all types of promotions. Yeah, like, dude, you don't want to make yourself famous among these group of people. They're going to remember that stuff forever. Like COLA, cost of living, allowance. Like, dude, all that stuff is part of this stuff. And you can't be the guy who's the face of it from like Alabama. Like you can't. Like you can't be a guy who's going to be the face of this, because at the end of the day, they're going to come after you, and you're going to be known for things that you're not going to be known for. I know Michael Merriweather saying he's looking out for his constituents, as he should, but those military people all over the world are not his constituents. He's holding up military promotions for people that's not part of Alabama. Like if he's looking out for people who's like part of the Alabama National Guard, okay, but he's doing this for the entire military. So you cannot be anywhere toward being completely right about that. So we got any other stories?
Did you also did you want to cover the IDF and the hostages story that came out? I think it was yesterday.
The run out of hostages, or
oh no,
or
where
some dying in custody type thing.
No. So basically, they have the IDF basically admitted, I believe it was yesterday, that they actually killed 3 Israeli hostages, thinking that they were Palestinian, I guess, fighters, with the claim that, hey, the Palestinians Hamas basically uses, human shields. So, they thought these people could have been human shields. It turns out, these people were walking, they had a white flag up. So, people are saying, hey, and it was actually, people saying, hey, these people violated doctrine as well as they violated international law. And now you've had an instance where, the military, which is supposed to be getting back these hostages, and everybody was outraged about these hostages, has now actually killed 3 of the Israeli hostages that were being held by Hamas. I'm assuming that were probably being released. So it's more egg on the face of Israel and where things are in this conflict. I'm sure, you had recently where there was a vote for a ceasefire that the U.S. basically stepped in and gave a veto vote at the UN. So, Biden is going to be getting under more and more pressure behind this, just because, the death toll has continued to rise. Like I said, you have now had even citizens who are hostages of the very country who is launching the attack who have been killed. So it brings in a lot of conversations. They even talked about this week that half of the bombs that Israel has dropped on Gaza have been dumb bombs, which, if you know anything about military, precision guided bombs have been increasing in use more and more. I think in the Iraq conflict or in Afghanistan, they're saying like the ratio to smart bombs to dumb bombs is like 65% smart. So, Israel's definitely taken a step back in this direction as well. So all of that is coming with, I'm sure more pressure and more stipulations around any sort of aid that's coming, as well as them pushing for another aid corridor. This one, I think, going straight from Israel to Gaza. So, yeah, a lot of this is starting to hit the fan.
I mean, like a lot of this stuff is their fault too. Like they went in, they knew about the attack in advance. They don't have clear military, like what the defense secretary was called for today, or this week, was clear military objectives. I'm like, the only clear military objective is declaring everybody Hamas and then trying to get rid of everybody in the area because they are Hamas, which is crazy. I mean, I understand Michael Merriweather say that this is a Biden thing. No, this is a foreign policy issue. And if the Republicans were in office, they would be for what's happening in that area.
Oh, they be giving
You can't.
carte blanche. They be giving
Yeah, of
carte
course they
blanche.
are, and,
Like,
and
Well,
it's like he don't understand that. It's like, come on, dude.
yeah, because if this is what makes Biden done, and I don't disagree that Biden has, is going to be on the wrong side of history. Republicans would have to be on the wrong side of history too, because they themselves have all gone over there. The whole Republican
Yes.
Congress has gone over there, including Chris Christie, who's running for president, has gone over there with a flak jacket. Why he's over there, I don't know. Lindsey Graham, another guy running around with his what's the name of the what's the name of the gun? The IWI, I think it's Israeli Weapons Industries T-shirt. Running around Israel, touching the wall and whatnot. And so I don't know if to say that Biden is done because of this, but essentially that it's a bipartisan issue. You got both parties that have committed to the defense of Israel at the expense of Palestinians in the domestic vote. And so I don't know if it's just Biden, but a lot of if Biden is done, that means the Republicans should be done too.
And that's absolutely correct. When we really get to foreign policy, and we've looked at it, and this has been consistent throughout the decades. When we look at foreign policy, when we look at domestic policy, it's partisan. When we look at things from a foreign perspective, it is actually America first, if you will, and Republicans and Democrats are sanguine. They're the same, very much on foreign policy, very much so. And as far as it comes to Israel, and that as we know, AIPAC and all that very strong political pacts that they've had here, both Democrats and Republicans have gone very heavy to gain their favor. So we're all on the same side as far as that's concerned from a partisan perspective. So yes, people can say Biden, he's finished, he's done. Really, what would the Republicans do? Something totally different? Don't believe so. Who really got us into a lot of this heavily was Trump at the last piece. We got deeply involved in that as well. So let's be honest about what's really happening here, and look at it from both sides. But a ceasefire would be the best way about going about this. But go ahead, Mike. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that it was Trump's Abraham Accords that really the catalyst for a lot of this.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I was
because if the whole idea was to have a two-state solution, the Abraham Accords completely contradicts that, because it recognizes Israel as a complete and single entity state. That means that there could be no two-party state or a two-state solution, because that's dead in the water because of the Abraham Accords. And so, a lot of this can be traced right back to Republicans, in trying to get Arabs on board to recognize Israel, when in fact, the only reason to recognize Israel was so that they can have access to military technologies. And now we see that none of them are actually buying the F-35, primarily because there's a dead man switch inside the F-35 that prevents any of those fighter jets purchased by any of those Arab entities from attacking Israel. Essentially, if you try to fly that plane into Israeli airspace, that thing will come falling down out of the sky. Nobody wants to buy a piece of hardware like that at the cost that they're talking.
Yeah. That is absolutely correct. It's difficult. I see somebody here in the chat room made a comment about young progressive white people, hate his stance on this. That's absolutely correct. You definitely have, a lot of young folks who are against this. Here, we've had quite a few demonstrations in Manhattan, down by the UN as well. Young people, coming out and speaking out against this and about what's happening to the Palestinians. So this is this is a hot issue. How deeply will this affect Biden, and will this be decisive against him when the Republicans are sitting in the same seat? As far as this is concerned, I have some questions about that as well.
I mean, none of that stuff was ever going to work. We already know a two-state solution was a crime and a sham. I mean, you're seeing the two-state solution right now. Who are they going after? They always consider those people one group of people. They're not differentiating and they're not distinguishing. They're doing a wholesale ground, like they're going to do everything to mess up their credibility in the area where everybody has to be like, "Hey, man, this stuff has to stop. This is just crazy."
Or maybe they're talking about a Norwegian model where you have, three countries on one plane of land.
It's gonna happen.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's not going to happen, but that maybe that was the aspirations, but that's never going to happen if you have, if the country was a pizza, Israel just gobbled up all the slices and left the crust behind. That's not acceptable.
Well, we did have the Oslo Accords that was put out there, Rabin and all that, and that didn't come about. I think that was the most realistic answer to this, but doesn't seem like that's going to be ramped up and put on the table at this stage.
Oh no, they had the ambassador. I believe the Israeli ambassador was on television, I believe in the UK, basically saying that, hey, Oslo Accords, two-state solution, essentially said it was dead. That, because the interviewer asked her, it was like, hey, how do we end this? And she was like, isn't a two-state solution? And she was like, no. She was basically trying to say that they don't want a two-state solution. They want a Palestinian state from the river to the sea. But to be honest, they do not want a two-state solution either, because they do not want a Palestinian state next door to an Israeli state either. So, it's going to be interesting to see where this goes, and that's sort of the big picture that Biden has been sort of trying to press Netanyahu on. Is like, hey, what is your long-term strategy in this? Because you can't have perpetual occupation of Gaza. And you can't sit up here and basically politically are not going to be able to have just carte blanche, like continued U.S. military support, like in a sense of a blank check. So you've got to actually have an exit strategy and what this thing actually looks like. A lot of people think, hey, that, they're doing exactly what they want to do is essentially, displace these people into Egypt for good and basically never give up that territory. But, where it goes long term, is that sustainable? Is the world going to be too morally outraged in Israel? Because that's the other thing. Some people are even saying that, hey, basically, Israel's going to isolate itself from the world if this continues. That, hey, the U.S. may, be giving you military supplies, but the rest of the world's going to look at you as a pariah state, essentially, if this continues on. So, that's sort of where it is right now. The other thing too is, someone was talking about, Joe Biden. Yeah, it's hurt his chances, I think, for re-election. It's made a lot of people angry in the Democratic Party. But let's not forget that, in the Obama administration, Netanyahu came here and spoke to a Republican Congress.
Yes.
And basically pushed for the advocacy of Israel, and even wanted Obama to give them assurance that the U.S. would support a preemptive strike against Iran. So,
and not to mention, they also have Viktor Orban come down to Texas. A whole entire president of another country, colluding with a whole entire Republican Party down in a conservative state. No one said anything about that.
Yeah. So, I mean, let's be clear. Republicans are very hawkish on Israel. So the idea that anything would be different, I think the only difference is, honestly, you wouldn't even have people basically pushing for the restraints. Like, Republicans would just be carte blanche supporting this guy.
That's exactly correct. So they are not clean. They can't sit here and say, well, we would have done something different. That's why they're staying rather quiet about this and letting Biden, of course, take the hits, because he's president, so he's got to take the hits. But they without a doubt, with respect to their foreign policy, wouldn't be any different.
Yeah, but what people don't understand, like these people who be pump faking, like they're so concerned about it. Like, dude, do you know how much worse this stuff would be if there would be a right wing government in charge and in control right now with this type of conflict? Listen, man, they would have dumped $100 billion worth of resources on Israel to be able to do whatever they wanted to do over there. So stop pump faking like, if Biden don't get this under control, I'm just gonna vote Republican. I'm like, and what do you think their policy is?
They might take away some Ukrainian funding and give it to Israel.
That's
That may
right.
be it.
Right.
Might. I mean, but it's like Ukraine is fighting our Russia battle for us for less money that we was doing for our overall budget. Period. And people don't even understand how that works. So it's kind of like you're kind of catching these people up with how defense spending and how things work in the world. It's just a backdoor way of them being caught up on issues that they're not really concerned about. They just say stupid shit so that way we can be able to just correct the dumb shit that they on, and then they just walk away without talking points and go into another conversation and use all of our stuff and pretend like they never heard it from us. That's all it is. They don't really
You know, the other part here is that why is it only Biden that they're concerned about? Not
care. Just
necessarily,
Biden.
you know, the you know the other branches such as the Senate, you know, the House. They're not worried about gubernatorial races coming up. They're not worried about, you know, mayoral races coming up. It only seems to start. Everything starts and ends with Biden. That's it for them. You know, and it's like, you know, you really look at Biden's track record. You know, he has done significantly way more in terms of passing bills and legislation, bipartisan support. He's passed over 300 bills so far, or he signed 300 bills so far. So I'm not sure if people just don't care if any work is actually being done, you know, in DC in the Beltway, or if it's just that they can't wait to see, you know, the Tangerine tyrant come back into office to sit around and do nothing. Yeah, I just find these things interesting.
Yeah, because the Republicans do not legislate. I mean, at the end of the day, they don't bring forth legislation. If they're doing anything, they're looking to block certain kinds of things from happening, but they are not really building any level of legislation, and they know it. They know that they're not legislating, and that's where they're vulnerable. You can attack them there, but you know, let's see if the Democrats get a little bit more on the offensive with respect to this. Like I said, there's a lot of game zone left. We're talking about, you know, the 24 election. There's still a lot of time. I won't really look at this thing that seriously and say what the bottom line is going to be until really the end of summer. You know, that will come up quickly, but end of summer coming into the fall, September, October, we're going to really see where we are then.
I mean, but
Yep.
that's just where we're at. It's kind of like people don't understand what's going on. They think it's like they want to feel like they felt about Obama in his second term, like they want to feel about Biden in his second term. Right now, paying 321 for diesel, 259, 256 for gasoline. First, it was the gas prices are too high. Now everything's down. Now there's another issue. I'm like, do you know, understand the party of unrestricted capitalism was in office? All this stuff will be way higher than it is right now.
Crime is down. Ironically, like it's
Yeah.
not talked about. Crime is way down actually as well.
Yeah.
You know, all these things that, like you said, all these things that people want to talk about. The economy is supposed to be going into a recession. You got a strong jobs report. It's just like, okay, like what these people are clearly not trying to look at any sort of data, like, or they're grasping at straws of, oh, well, what's the next thing that we could blame on Biden?
Yeah, well, like you said, that's the politics they're running. What else can they really run on? Because they can't run on any records. They can't run on any legislation. They
They
can't
didn't
run on anything.
legislate. They didn't legislate shit.
They don't legislate. They don't. And they've been the party of no, you know, for a very long time now. I'm looking at over 20, almost 30 years. That's kind of what they've been. So you know, that's pretty much what we're dealing with, and everything. Well, I'm not going with the Democrats because they have been giving me everything that I've wanted, which
Some
seems
go
to me.
pump fake Republican and they don't haven't got a track record of giving you anything that you want, but you over there anyway. Okay, man. All right,
Yeah,
man.
that's where we're at. That's where we're at.
Yeah. No. I was gonna say I got two more MOT. One's local for
Yeah, go
Mike, and I've got one that's more national. No, so sort of kind of along the last story of the Israeli Palestine conflict. This week, the Harvard Corporation voted unanimously to keep Claudine Gay. So for those people who do not know, recently, I believe it was last week, you basically had the presidents of UPenn, presidents of MIT, and Dr. Claudine Gay, who's the first Black president of Harvard University, go before Congress and testify on anti-Semitism on university campuses. They made a lot of headlines and a lot of basically sound bites, basically because of their responses. Was it Elise Stefanik was basically questioning them on, speech that she thought, whether it qualified as hate speech and whether it was a violation of their school's conduct, code of conduct. All three presidents basically gave very nuanced, sort of legal type of answers, which basically, a bunch of Republicans have now been basically pretending like they're somehow, against anti-Semitism, when some of the far right in their party, and even not even the far right, some of just people in the establishment, have a reputation for being anti-Semitic. They are now basically trying to run in and, rally behind, these people who are upset. People like Bill Ackman, who's a hedge fund manager, or Alan Dershowitz, who was a former legal professor at Harvard. Republicans are now running to these people's aid, pretending that they actually care about this issue, when normally they're on the side advocating for free speech. So after this hearing, there's a lot of pressure. The UPenn president, she did resign from her position, even though she did keep her tenure faculty position. And people thought that Claudine Gay would be the next one pressed out, because of external pressures and because of pressure from Congress. About 700 faculty members basically signed a letter supporting her, stating their support, as well as some prominent Black alumni of the university as well, basically reached out to try to organize support on her behalf as well. And like I said, I believe it was last Monday, the Harvard Corporation voted to retain her and basically give her a vote of confidence as president going forward.
Craig, it
So
was
this
exactly
is
Monday. It was exactly Monday.
yeah. So this is where kind of it is, where you're seeing sort of the flare ups on campus of culture wars, free speech, hate speech, where the line is. You have people like Alan Dershowitz, who was very much advocating for her to be thrown out, and even tried to suggest that the rise in anti-Semitism on college campuses is to be attributed to DEI, which is absolutely insane, because anti-Semitism did not show up when DEI was created. So this is another instance of the right, or people who are sympathetic to it, even though Alan Dershowitz is a Democratic, ironically, or people who are very much pro-Israel, very much trying to control their narrative and force people out. She also faced pressure to resign when, right after October 7th, there was basically a student organization on behalf of 30 organizations. They basically released a statement, basically blaming Israel for the attack on October 7th. That led to people like Bill Ackman, calling for the condemnation from the university to, in their mind, speak out more swiftly. They didn't believe that they took a swift enough stance. And then B, basically try to ask for the names of the students who were in the organization, for the list of names, so essentially they could blackball them from industry. His words were, "So we don't mess around, so we don't make a mistake and hire someone who is anti-Semitic at one of our jobs." So that's how far this is stretched out to, with basically a fight between the university, students on the campus, and prominent alumni threatening to withhold funds or to try to blackball people from industry.
I mean, but they would have to have known that this was the worst way to try to do it. Is try to get rid of the president to do what? Especially at this point, the PR war at this point, getting rid of a person versus the actual atrocities that's been committed over there. Like, come on, dude. Like, I mean, they had their best chance at like October 8th, 9th, but anything that went beyond that, person's there forever, man. Person is there. Like they were never going to be able to get rid of her. They just wasn't. It just said
It
in
would have been a bad
schools you
look.
have debates. Yeah, in schools you have debates, and in actual universities you have to have the debate. But they don't want the actual conversation to happen at all. And you can't run that type of situation on a university like that. I mean, you could probably do that on PragerU and kind of all that other stuff, but you can't do that stuff at like Harvard. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, and the UPenn president, my understanding is she had some other issues going on, but they did have a prominent donor who I believe was going to donate like $100 million or something like that, threatened to withdraw their donation.
Man, look.
So,
man, look. Man, look. If that's all it took for you not to donate the money, then all right, man. Just keep your pockets, man. Just keep your pockets.
Yeah, I was gonna say it should be known. Like, you're talking about some significant money to be withheld because I believe Harvard has an endowment of like $52 billion. So
yeah,
like,
a lot. I mean, it's just where we at. It's like there's no nuance to the conversation. It's kind of like the nuance is just even trying to begin to have the conversation historically, and then like the other side is we don't want to talk about anything.
Yeah, Michael Mayweather. It's not, but that's the narrative that's being painted right now. If you do not, if you do not come out, yeah. If you try to talk about this conflict in the big picture, if you do not come out and condemn in some people's opinion, with enough fervor, the Hamas and all this, that's the label that's being leveled against people. You had Netanyahu on TV, I think it was about a week ago, saying if you try to investigate Israel for war crimes, you're being anti-Semitic. I mean,
that's what he said. He said it out loud.
Yeah, that's what they're saying out loud now.
Yeah, I mean that, and let's put it like this: I have a good friend. His son, he's an attorney. His son is an attorney as well, and he's a young guy. He and my daughter about the same age, but he works at a pretty prestigious law firm in the city, and he's like a junior partner now. He's black kid, very sharp. Matthew, very 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 intelligent. But the partners are Jewish, and he's saying just about how he has to watch almost anything he says, and he cannot take really a position politically that would, let's say, go against anything against Israel, because he's thinking that he'll lose his position, he'll definitely lose his partnership, and he'll figure he probably will end up losing his job. And there are a couple of people that were supposed to be hired on to the firm who are not coming on board because of their positions on Israel. Very disturbing, man. This is very disturbing. Very disturbing. No freedom of speech on this. So, yeah, Netanyahu and these guys are walking around as racist and as effed up as these guys are. They're trying to tell you cannot say anything against Israel. You can't do it. And many of us are feeling that. And many of us are feeling that heat who are in the business world, corporate world especially. And I would say more so, especially in the in the legal sector and some other areas where these people hold a lot of sway.
That's just where we're at.
Even Candace Owens is feeling the heat. You're seeing this whole fallout between her, Ben Shapiro, and Tucker Carlson on this issue. So it's even affecting the right.
And she's and Candace was their golden girl, their golden blackie there for a minute. Now some of that shine has been knocked off the penny.
Nah, I think the shine is still there. I think the true colors are still shining through. True colors, like, too far. I mean, kind of like like a penalty on the play, but first down. offset penalties or whatever. Excessive cooning, number 43 offense, first down.
Yeah.
Oh man, we got anything else before we get up out of here?
Mike, do you want to, if you're still there, did you want to touch on this this holiday party? People have called a holiday party up in Boston.
Yeah, I can touch on that a little bit. Mayor Wu is the first non-white mayor of the city, and she has a bit of a commitment to decentering whiteness, in politics. And so what she wanted to do was have this sort of party for Black people, Black and Latino. And so they in Boston, we have something called BLA, which is the Black Latino Asian Caucus. And so there is a considerable amount of people here that are non-white. The majority of the city is non-white. I think it's like 57% of the city is non-white. And so why anyone would have a problem with this, I don't know. And why they sent the invitation out this way, I don't know either. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. You have everybody's numbers. Why would you have to send an invitation out? But that being said, I think that Mayor Wu is doing exactly what Black people have wanted her to do in the first place, which is to center Black people at the forefront of politics. And so it makes a lot of sense as to what they were trying to do, primarily because this is the first time that they've ever had to have a city run by a non-white mayor. Before that, you had Marty Walsh, and before that, you had Mayor Menino, and then before that, you had Mayor Flynn. And so you've had 35, 40, 50 years of mayoral governance of white men, and no one said anything about it. When white men, well, the Irish guys were only invited to the party and Black people were not. No one said anything about it. So I don't see what the big deal is now. It's a VIP event. What are you complaining about?
Yeah. Black Avenger said in the chat, Michelle Wu is not behaving like the model minority.
Yeah, it's actually Wu, as in like Wu Tang. So
no, but I do know that this story has created sort of one of these culture wars / flashpoints for the right of it's a non-whites only party and this and that. But my understanding of Michelle Wu is she's actually married to a white guy. But this is from my understanding kind of been part of the course of like, hey, to your point, Mike, she is basically trying to center Blackness or non-white people. And my understanding that the board is basically, the city council is basically like 6 members are non-white and the rest are white. So, very much trying to create some sort of equity, as well as a safer space for people to operate in, outside of the normal working environment.
Well, it defeats the talking point that Dems don't do anything for Black folks. In fact,
Yeah.
here you have a whole entire party, strictly for Black folks, and then people got a problem with it. If you look at her track record, she's doing exactly what Black folks have wanted her to do in the first place, from a legislative standpoint. And she speaks Spanish too. For a lot of people who don't know, she speaks Spanish fluently, and that's kind of how she dominated the race. And so you have an Asian woman who speaks Spanish fluently, who is aligned with Black people. It don't get no more progressive than that.
Yeah.
And her homegirl is actually Ayanna Pressley, and she lives in the hood. That's pretty much who she is. She came from.
Oh wow. No, I was gonna say.
She graduated from Harvard.
Oh wow. No, I was gonna say too. My understanding is this was something more of that the outside right wing media, people like the New York Post, or something like a Newsmax, that they caught on to. But I didn't hear too much fallout from local Bostonians or even white liberals for that matter. It seemed like it was more of just the far right who is trying to latch onto this.
Yeah, yeah, because the decentering of whiteness is what they find troubling, and they can't actually do any. They can't imagine a society that does not put white men at the forefront. That's really what the problem is. And all the work that she's doing benefits Black people at the end of the day. Maybe not tomorrow morning, but sometime in the next few quarters, it will benefit. Her space program and a lot of the bike lanes and policy work that she's doing is actually in the interest of Black people. And I don't see why so many people would be up in arms about a mayor looking out for Black people's interests. And I see some of the content creators right now going live talking about that, and I'm like, what are you upset about? When Dems aren't doing anything for Black people, you talk about them. When Dems are doing things for Black people, you talk about them. Whether it's Brandon Johnson out in Chicago or Mayor Wu in Boston, you always got something to say about Dems, but nothing to say about Republican leadership that does absolutely nothing for fucking Black people.
None in conservative states. Nobody concentrates on it at all. Crazy.
Yeah, and I was gonna say too. I was listening to some other commentary. They were saying, hey, if people were up in arms about this, are you up in arms about any sort of identity based, whether it be a women's only or a women's holiday party, or a veterans holiday party, or even they were like, even if you had you have holiday parties that are de facto whites only, in the sense of it just so happens everyone who attends is white, and for some reason no one who, or they have the one token Black person that's in attendance. So I think more than anything it just gave fodder, because the email went out and everyone got it and people knew it was happening, versus if it just happened. I'm sure there are it's Boston there, I'm sure there are plenty of white only, like I said, they may not mess around and send out an email that says whites only holiday party, but just by who actually gets invited, shows up, it becomes that by de facto nature. So
yeah, I agree.
No, for a long time there were Irish only events. Marty Walsh is Irish. Mayor Menino was Italian, but prior to that, you had Mayor Flynn, who was Irish. No one said anything when it was just them. When it was the Good Old Boys Club. Now that the Good Old Boys don't have a club anymore, they got a problem with that. That's a sort of challenges that you have when you're trying to govern a city that is multicultural and multiracial. A lot of people think that it's easy. Them should just do this and them should do that. And then you talk to Republicans, they don't govern at all, and nobody says anything about that.
You get nothing. You get nothing, and they don't say nothing about you not getting nothing when they're in charge. They don't say anything.
Yeah, no one had a problem with country music TV. When they had a good old time, having their own white musicians on there. Now that Black people came up with BET, then all of a sudden they got a problem with it, man. So
that's just what we're at, man. Like, too many people are talking. They want focus without participation, because they feel like they're owed something, and it's like somehow this type of nonsense have been passed down to them. I don't get where it comes from. Like, this is a participatory based system, and if you don't participate, like, you still have to convince people to show. You still have people talking dumb shit about, oh, I'm just gonna show up for the local and not the national. Like, like, you still have this going on where they have this supposed level of non-participation that they're going to exercise because it's going to help them out somewhere down the line where the other side is participating in the entire process. I don't understand it. I'm trying to understand.
You have some of these fools out here telling people don't participate, that if that's going to be your protest, and that's going to mean something. You have people saying this. I've heard this many times from quite a few people making these ridiculous statements. Well, we're not just going to come out and vote. We're going to hold our vote back. We're not going to do a thing. We're going to sit down and not participate. Sit down and not participate. You're out of the game. Don't you understand that? It's, but you hear people literally talking about this like this is some type of legitimate strategy. It's insane, but we have this going on. Some of that going on to this very day.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, CJ has something to say. He says if it's the if that's the official mayor's party, you can't exclude people. It was unofficial. It was an unofficial party. They accidentally sent it out from. It was a mistake that it went out to the white council members, but it was not an official party of the mayor. It was an unofficial one. So.
Yep, and I saw Wu. She was on television, saying this, making an apology and so forth on this. But they're going to try to run. They're going to try to run with it. They're going to try to run with it just because she's Asian, Asian mayor. They're going to try to run with it on that, based on that alone.
Listen, man, like that if you wasn't invited to the mayoral's ball or the police ball, and you just start stepping up in there as if I'm invited to this when your ass is not invited. All right, man. Come on, man. Like, bro, you didn't get an invitation because you're not on the list. You can't just show up to things, even if you think that you should be there.
What about the Asian hate crime bill?
They got a hate crime bill all by themselves. It said Asian hate crime. It said it. I've seen it. Okay, what's the name of the bill? Asian hate crime bill. I know what I'm talking about. What
the fuck? Oh man! Oh my gosh! It never read it. Like it never read it. Never looked in it. I had to give it like 5 pages.
It's only like 5 pages too.
But Roland Martin read the thing on his show. Roland Martin did it. Roland Martin did it.
But they miss those Roland Martin shows though. Like they miss those Roland Martin shows where conservatives get cooked. It seems to be not in people's memory when conservatives get on there and they get completely fried. But they can understand everything else Roland Martin says, except for when he allows people to come up there and state their point of view and they get destroyed.
And they get lit up. And they get lit up like a bottle rocket. But that's what goes on. And went over the Asian hate crime. Went over the bill. Went over it.
BA asked a question. Matt, can you imagine if a black mayor had sent out that email? Well, I think the mayor of DC is pretty black, and she sends out emails all the time inviting those folks to the to their special brunches and whatnot. It's all this questioning of whether or not a black mayor would have done it, or no one had anything to say about Kevin DeLeon and those folks out there in LA. That were excluding black people, the Latino caucus out there that was excluding black people, from events and whatnot and funding. So
yeah, nobody cared.
Yeah,
nobody cared at all.
Yeah,
but it's called Congressional Black Caucus for a reason.
Yeah, but apparently, even though they put out reports every year, the Congressional Black Caucus didn't do anything for me.
Yeah.
All right, man. Where do you live? Oh, I live in Indianapolis. Okay, they don't have a Congressional Black Caucus individual for Indianapolis, man. I'm sorry, you ain't got no representation, man. Like, what are we talking about here?
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's where we at. It's kind of like the more you get people into actually taking the side and actually understanding locally what's going on in their government. The local dovetails into the actual state, dovetails into the actual national. And if you don't understand how any of this stuff works, the only thing you're going to do is try to ask all these questions to try to get things explained to you. And after a while, people are just going to look at you crazy, be like, this is something that you should already know. These things are not hiding from you. These things are actually in your face all day. You can set up a Google alert to learn what's happening in your actual community. This stuff is well publicized. What votes coming up on what day? This stuff isn't secret. But at the end of the day, they just want to be kept up to date with everything that's going on while simultaneously not being invested on anything that's going on.
Mhm.
And that's, dude, no one has any room or time for personnel like that. While the other side shows up and vote no matter what's going on, no matter what they get out of it. They show up every time, voting for wars, voting for cuts in their own health care, or having no health care at all. While you say, like, you know what, I'm just going to hold my vote and I'm just going to let these people just walk through. Like, come on, dude. And it's like, man, at the end of the day, you got to stop trying to convince people to show up to democracy. At the end of the day, it's a participatory based system. These people fought and died for your actual ability to actually participate in the system itself. If you don't have the actual ability to want to even be interested in the process or just want to be around long enough to get your questions answered so that we can disappear off in the ether, like, bro, nobody wants to be associated with you. And then they want to be mad when people be like, well, all this stuff is for your benefit. And then they be like, well, explain it to me again. It's like, oh my God, no one's doing that. We're not restructuring the conversation around people who don't care.
Man, fact.
It, I mean, isn't that the thing though? Like, why would you keep restructuring the conversation every election cycle around people who just don't care about the process? At some point, you're just gonna move on to people who do care about the process. Period. So, anybody else got any final words before we get up out of here, Mike?
Hey, thanks for having me on.
All right, Nago.
Hey, MOT, good conversation, man. Once again, thanks for having me on as well. Greatly appreciate it.
All right, Renaissance, you still here?
Yeah, I'm still here. No, great show. Looking forward to next week, and we'll see. We'll see what the week holds.
All right, we're just gonna be building the actual docket, old school style, with things that are going on every day, so that way we can be able to throw them into the group chat.
Okay.
So that way we can be able to have this dossier together. So that way we can be able to just roll out with the actual information. So that way we can have a track record of actually being able to go over these things. So that way people can just stop claiming that we don't know anything about domestic politics. So that way you have an actual record of what's actually going on in the country, and no one else is covering it. So.
Yep. Okay. Nah, we'll do that this week.
All right, cool. All right, thanks so much for coming on, man. And everybody else who's still listening, I want to thank you guys for coming through. At the end of the day, this is Politics 101. This week in politics is an insurrection slash overthrowing the government, a protected act. We talk about a lot of things here, but at the end of the day, you're going to have to keep up with these things on your own locally where you are at. So that way, when you come to this conversation, this is just an overview of the things that are going on inside of the country. This is only geared toward getting you to be more invested and involved in the actual society to which you actually live in. With that said, I want to thank you guys for coming through. I'm the man of tomorrow. You guys have a really nice rest of y'all night. Peace.